on whenever. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We're having some technical difficulties, but thank you for spending some time with us today. The Delaware County Transportation Management Association welcomes you to our Fall 2022 Transportation Project webinar. We're extremely well attended today, so thank you to everyone who joined in. Our topic affects so many people who not only live in Delaware County, but drive and travel through Delaware County on any given day for work or what have you. The beloved Blue Route is not so beloved on Friday at 3 p.m. So we will be hearing from the project engineers who are working on the 476 projects that are going to be happening in Delaware County. And hopefully we will be able to hear and get a Senate Transportation Committee update from Senator Kearney if we can kind of figure out that technical aspect. But for those of you who are new to joining us, let me take just a moment to orient you to who we are and what we do. The DCTMA is a private nonprofit organization, and we're dedicated to promoting and educating employers and commuters of travel options that are alternatives to single occupancy vehicles. Some of the current projects that we're working on throughout the county include, we hold informational seminars for seniors regarding all of the current information changing on SEPTA and Delgo Transit. We will be holding a transportation demand management education conference for municipalities. That will be in spring of 2023. And we also are currently the awardee and are administrating a pretty ambitious TCDI project involving travel recommendations or multimodal recommendations to the length of the Route 13 Chester Pike corridor from Ridley Park down to Sharon Hill. So we have a lot of things on our plate. And so for any of our non-member guests out there, please consider supporting the DCTMA with an annual partnership to our 501c3 organization. Because we operate as a private nonprofit, any entity that has received funding through the American Rescue Plan or ARPA funding, that is a compliant use of this fund. DCTMA partnerships are compliant to private nonprofits. And these funds are eligible for partnership dues through December 31st of 2024. So if your company has any community involvement recommendations for senior members or any sustainability goals that your company works towards, or if your company wants employees to have pro bono initiatives to nonprofits, we are all of that. So please consider joining us. You are hearing all over the airwaves about the IIJA infrastructure funding that is coming down the road. That's no pun intended, but coming to Pennsylvania, and it's coming here. It's coming to Delaware County. So what are you as a business? What are you doing to help your commuters navigate these road projects? And how are you or your business finding notices of funding opportunities that your entity may be qualified for? Be on the forefront of receiving all of the critical and timely information by subscribing to DCTMA. So contact us at info, that's info at dctma.org to get comprehensive information about the benefits of joining us. Lauren, were you able to get the senator unmuted? Can you look in participants? He's calling in.
There are a couple people who called in, so I can just.
Okay.
Okay, Senator, if you want to try it now, see if you're able to talk.
He's muted and he can't unmute from his end. Unmute him. Hello, Senator, you're unmuted.
Hi, this is Senator Kearney.
Hello,
Can you
Senator.
hear me?
Thank you. Yes, we can. Thank you so much for taking time to join us today. If you could just
Kind
give
of appropriate.
us
I'm in the middle of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. So it's
from the middle of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Thank you so much. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on in the Senate Transportation Committee? Just give us like a little bit of highlights of what's going on down in Senate Transportation.
absolutely. So we had some sort of big things happen in June. First one was around bridge and highway authorization. The legislature tried to enact the first bridge and highway reauthorization bill in about 10 years. The Senate Transportation Chair kind of threw a wrench in the whole process by adding an amendment to the bridge bill, which basically cut 95% of the authorized projects, including all 27 Delaware County projects that were in the bill, because of its concerns around government spending. You know, this would have been devastating for communities like Ridley Park, where the Sellers Avenue Bridge replacement project needed to be included in the bill in order to move forward. Brian reminded that these authorization bills are not spending bills, and I kind of called them out for his shenanigans. So in the end, we were able to talk him down from the ledge by agreeing to pass legislation to end the P3 major bridge tolling program. And in the end, we passed both the highway and the bridge authorization bills in full. So what does that mean? The end of the P3 major bridge program. Basically, also this June, state court shot down the P3 board's plan to toll 9 bridges across the Commonwealth through public-private partnerships, which would have paid for their repair and other projects in each PennDOT region. Additionally, the committee and the legislature passed legislation to permanently prevent the P3 program from tolling without authorization from the legislature, except in the cases of building new managed lanes for added capacity. That being said, without the tolling proposal, the legislature is really at a loss at how to pay for over $2 billion in major bridge repairs, which would basically eat up about half the state's funding from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Senate Republicans have introduced a transportation structure generally, but it mainly relies on borrowing money, which I'm very leery of, and which doesn't make as much sense now that interest rates are rising so quickly. It's clear we need to explore more comprehensive solutions to replace the gas tax, like some of the options that were detailed in the governor's Transportation Revenue Options Commission. Another thing that came up was protection of Act 89 funding for SEPTA. One of the major accomplishments for our region this budget season was the protection of SEPTA's Act 89 funds. Over $450 million that SEPTA had been annually receiving from the Turnpike switched over to a vehicle sales tax revenue. This is really good news because it allows SEPTA to bond these funds for the first time and take a huge swing at its big backlog of projects. We were scared that the legislative majority would not honor the Act 89 plan to cut funding from public transit. But this means that SEPTA is going to be able to move forward with its great capital needs, including bus fleet replacement and trolley modernization, both of which would be great for Delco communities and employers. So in terms of things we're working on this fall, the big issue facing the committee is whether we'll pass legislation to provide for commercial deployment of highly autonomous vehicles. The HAV industry has been pushing for greater allowances for research and commercial use of HAVs on all public roads in Pennsylvania for a couple of years now, while labor groups like the Teamsters have raised concerns over safety and job displacement. There are 2 competing proposals right now, Senate Bill 965 and House Bill 2398. And the bill authors are in odds about a few different provisions in either bill. I'm not sure what the resolution will be, but we'll have more to report back in October if they can get it done. Personally, I think the shift towards autonomous vehicles is inevitable, but I want to ensure that it's done safely for communities. Most of the job gains from the greater research and deployment will be in Pittsburgh, which has been really a nationwide leader in the development of these autonomous vehicles. Another big issue moving this fall that's been on your radar is the Parked Car Protected Bike Lanes Bill, HB 140. Unfortunately, Senator Lagerholt ran the surprise amendment into this bill at a committee meeting this July. It was unrelated to the bike lane, and which really politicized the bill. The bill now requires the appointment of a special prosecutor to replace the Philadelphia District Attorney in cases that occur on the SEPTA system, and would require the city of Philadelphia to repeal its driver equality ordinance, which they recently enacted to cut down on racial profiling or driving while black. Last week, the Senate majority moved the bill to second consideration, indicating that they want to debate the bill in October on the floor. Personally, I think this is all uncalled for. It's just a way to bring the Larry Krasner impeachment drama to the Senate floor during the election season. The amendment has nothing to do with the bike lanes. It's just really sad that they're holding up good policy to try to score some political points. So that was a lot, but I think those are the major issues that we're facing in transportation going into the fall.
Thank you so much. If anybody has any questions for the senator, please put them in the Q&A. One comment that I would like to make that we were watching pretty closely was the Act 89. As Delaware County, of all of the Philadelphia ring counties, Delaware County relies and has the most activity with respect to SEPTA and transit as a whole. So because of our reliability on that, that was huge for our area, not just Philadelphia, but that brings that to Delaware County as well.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Great news.
So I don't see, how to re-register, okay. I don't see any questions. Yes, no. I do not see any questions on those things. So if that's all for the Transportation Committee, is there anything else you'd like for us, Senator, or we can let you go to Pittsburgh?
No, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to email or call the office.
Okay.
We're
and
pretty
they can
easy to find.
Absolutely, and they can put them through to us, and we'll pass them along to Sarah.
That sounds fine. I'm going to hang on and listen. I'm curious to hear the rest of the.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
I'm just driving across central Pennsylvania.
Exactly. So we're going to put you back on mute. And now, thank you, Senator Kearney, for sharing everything that's going on with the Transportation Committee. That's a lot. And now it's time to turn our attention to what we all pretty much came for, one of the most vital roadways in Delaware County and what's in store for Route 476. Locals and visitors alike both enjoy the convenience and the frustration that traveling from the East-West Turnpike and Northeast Extension all the way down to 95 that this highway brings. Just a little anecdotal information. Prior to the opening of the Blue Route, my first job out of college, and I'm dating myself, was located in Fort Washington, and I lived in Drexel Hill. So every day I would have to travel Route 1 to 252 to 202 to the Pennsylvania Turnpike at Valley Forge every single day. So it was an understatement to say that the opening of 476 was a game changer, not just for me, but for many people, obviously everyone. But fast forward to now, fast forward to 2022. What we're weighing today is travelers are weighing both the benefits and the challenges of such a heavily traveled roadway. Couple that with the fact that 476 dumps into I-95 at the bottom, and that's got its own stuff going on these days. And all of this is going on all at the same time. So we in Delaware County have to consider this short-term pain for long-term gain. And here to give us some specifics on projects, locations, and timelines is our team of engineering professionals. Michael McGuire is a consultant project manager with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation in District 6 and is the PennDOT project lead on 476 projects. Sandi Yeakley is an engineer and senior project manager for Benesch Co. Benesch holds the contract on the 476 project. And Conor McAliney is a representative for Drive Engineering, which is a messaging program, and is going to explain their role in the 476. So during these talks, If any of our attendees have any questions for our presenters, please put them in the Q&A and remember to indicate which person the question is for. And now we're going to turn it over to the engineers for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Take it away, guys.
Hopefully it's all good.
It's all good.
Thank you very much, Tracy, for that introduction. I'd like to go through a number of projects that we've got coming on 476 in the next few years. Hopefully, are you able to see my screen, which should show the Mcdade Boulevard interchange or part of it?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure I'm actually sharing. We've got 4 projects I want to talk about. Tracy already introduced us. Connor's with Drive Engineering. He's handling some of the ITS aspects of 2 of these projects. And Sandi with Alfred Benesch is leading 2 of the projects as well. Credit to a couple other engineers. HDR is the designer of the Mcdade Boulevard project. And the IMP project, which I'll talk about in a minute, is being designed in-house by the PennDOT District 6 Design Squad with help from JMT. 4 projects. First of all, the Mcdade Boulevard Interchange Improvements Project. This is under construction now. You would have started field work about 2 months ago. I'll get into what that project is. The second one is 476 IMP. That's resurfacing the Blue Route, including lighting and guide rail updates. That's in preliminary engineering now, but we will be under construction next summer. So there will be milling and paving on the Blue Route between the Schuylkill Expressway all the way down to the Mcdade Boulevard project starting next summer. So there's going to be some construction coming. The third project is section ATC. That will be variable speed limits, queue detection, and ITS upgrades on the Blue Route. That is in final design now and should be under construction by this time next year. That doesn't have the traffic impacts during construction that IMP will have. We shouldn't have a lot of lane closures for that. That'll be mostly shoulder work. And then the final one, HSR, that is the long-term part-time shoulder use, lane control, ramp metering project, where we'll be able to use the shoulder from Westchester Pike down to 95 and on 95 southbound to basically through the Commodore Barry interchange. That is in preliminary engineering, and that's out closer to the end of the decade or the second half in the 2020s. All right, so let's start one project at a time. First, the Mcdade Boulevard project. This project is going to put new signals at Bullens Lane. It's going to remove, and I have a graphic that I can show this on, remove the northbound off-ramp to Mcdade eastbound. There'll be expansion and signalization of the northbound on-off ramp to Mcdade. That's the loop ramp that comes around. Right now, you can only go westbound on Mcdade. There'll be an option to come to a signalized intersection to go eastbound. There'll be a new bridge to carry the ramps over Crum Creek. There's the removal of that long pedestrian bridge, an extension of the 3-lane section on 476 northbound past Bullens Lane. Right now it ends prior to that. And we're going to extend the on-ramps at both Mcdade and Route 1 northbound. So detailed, I don't know if you're able to see can you see my cursor if I put it on there like that? Okay, that makes this easier. So to quick go through what I was just talking about. The new signals at Bullens Lane, that's outside of this graphic, but this ramp right here is going to go away. This big long pedestrian bridge, which is this guy, is going to go away. This ramp is going to be expanded. Right now, you can only come around and go westbound on Mcdade. You're going to continue to be able to do that, but we're going to expand it such that we have a larger signalized intersection here with Mcdade Boulevard. So nobody will be able to come off this ramp, then get over into the left lane, get on that ramp, trying to get around that northbound backup every afternoon. That whole thing, that's gone. Benefits here is one, this structure is such that it's just kind of scary. A lot of people don't want to walk over that. A sidewalk will run down Mcdade Boulevard. There'll be a pedestrian bridge over Crum Creek, which is buried underneath here. And then that will connect into the existing sidewalk, which goes under this other ramp and then proceeds westbound. Traffic right now, there's 3 lanes northbound, but the third lane ends right about here. That third lane is going to continue for a little ways on up toward Bullens Lane. I think that's a little over a quarter of a mile further. The idea here is to let all these lane switches and everything else get done before we drop the lane. We also want to get rid of the backup that extends onto I-95, sometimes both northbound and southbound. Benefit here is in the PM, we should be able to reduce travel time northbound by a couple of minutes. Not a dramatic change, but still a change in its own right. The bridge we're replacing is this bridge over Crum Creek. It's a 3-span, which we'll get into that now. Upcoming items of work, September, this month, we're going to be doing some temporary widening and temporary pavement on the median of Mcdade, temporary widening of the ramp. And then this October through the winter, we're going to be clearing, doing the traffic shifts, and we're going to begin construction of this brand new 3-span bridge. This bridge will be a curved girder, 2 70-foot spans on the outsides, and then an 84-foot center span over Crum Creek. Questions so far? That's the first project, Mcdade Boulevard. Like I said, that's under construction now. There'll be some paving on the blue route that goes along with that and other incidental construction. The next one is 476 section IMP. I assume that means improvement. This is in preliminary engineering now, but it's quite far through preliminary engineering. This involves the complete resurfacing of all lanes, ramps, shoulders, everything from the limits of the Mcdade project. We're not going to overlap. We're not going to pave the same area twice, all the way up to the Schuylkill Expressway. So that's all of Delaware County and up into Montgomery County. We will finish the guide rail updates that the Interstate Guide Rail Project started. So all the guide rail will be updated and MASH compliant. There will be lighting upgrades. Predominantly, we're going to use the existing poles and system and put LED heads on it, but there are some gaps in the lighting where we're going to be filling some of those in. There was also an avalanche northbound, north of Lancaster Avenue. This is in Montgomery County. That caused the collapse of a light pole. That'll all be repaired and cleaned up. If you travel northbound, before you start going down the hill to Conshohocken, there's some nice landscaping off to the right there. This project will be under construction starting next summer and will continue into the summer of 2024. Lots of milling and paving. There will be nighttime traffic impacts, mostly short-term moving lane closures for these operations. The next grouping of projects, and I see there are some questions. Let me just look. Is the new ramp bridge on a new alignment or is it a staged replacement in the same location? Down at Mcdade Boulevard, it is a similar location. It's not the exact same location. There will be a slight shift, but generally speaking, similar location, but we had to do staging. And some people may be late. Oh, okay. Yeah, I had password problems too. Next is section ATC and HSR. Federal Highway scoped these back in the spring of 2018. Before the shutdown with the pandemic, we were able to do traffic modeling as well as noise modeling and existing noise monitoring for the project area. The HSR project, adding part-time travel on the shoulders, was considered what they call capacity adding or type 1 for noise. So we will be doing a full noise study to either make sure that the noise protection that's along the Blue Route from Westchester Pike down to McDade is acceptable and meets criteria, and if it doesn't, we will have to update it for the HSR project. The ATC HSR project includes DMS signs, variable speed limits, part-time shoulder use, lane control. Traffic studies were done as part of the regional model. So I-95 and other roadways in the arterials are all linked together. Before the pandemic, we nailed down design criteria in terms of shoulder use has to maintain a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, and that includes sight distance, which gets complicated. We worked through lane widths, and we did an alternatives analysis. At one point, when people think, okay, you're going to use the shoulder, they usually think outside shoulder. PennDOT did an exhaustive analysis and basically came to the conclusion that using the outside shoulder for part-time shoulder use was not going to be acceptable in terms of emergency response, abandoned vehicles or vehicles that break down, snow removal, as well as issues during heavy rain events. Usually that outside shoulder is used to convey stormwater. So the decision was made because 476, for the most part, has a substantial median. We're going to widen to the inside, and the part-time shoulder use will be on the inside, the median side shoulder of the roadway. That's going to involve the construction of some retaining walls and some bridge improvements, particularly between Baltimore Pike and McDade, but a little bit up by Marple and Haverford as well, near Reed Road. During the year 2021, the decision was made to break out and advance the queue detection and the variable speed limits because they have, quite honestly, independent value. And if we can reduce crashes and the congestion that arises from them, why wait to do the studies for HSR? Our challenge now is to make sure that what we put in for ATC isn't in the way of HSR and we don't end up moving too much twice. So ATC is the advanced construction of the variable speed limits and the queue detection. Limits of ATC are basically from just north of the Schuylkill Expressway all the way down to I-95. On I-95 northbound, we're going to have to, or on 476 northbound, there will be work that will affect I-95 southbound from Stewart Avenue to the Blue Route, just because we got to warn people that speed limit's going to change and that sort of thing. Preliminary data, the department has some, well, there's the limits. Like I said, we're up around Old Gulf Road, all the way down through Lancaster Avenue, Westchester Pike, Route 1, Baltimore Pike, and McDade. Northbound, we start back near the Boeing interchange, which is Stewart Avenue. Once again, that's for the variable speed limits and queue detection. What's the benefit of ATC? The design team did crash analysis. The department has lots of safety data for the Blue Route. We've got 7 roadway segments out here that have double the statewide crash rate, predominantly driven by rear end crashes, which is often due to congestion. People go around a turn and traffic is stopped, or somebody slows down faster than somebody else. Rear end and hit fixed object crashes are 50%, as of the last 5-year count, were 50% of the crashes on the Blue Route in Delaware County. The variable speed limits we found, and there aren't a lot of good examples of this around the country, but Georgia and Wyoming are 2 places we did poke around. When variable speed limits were put in on roadways in those 2 states, they saw, you see it there, a 29 to 34% reduction. We are getting to the point now where we have some data from the variable speed limits that PennDOT just did on the Schuylkill Expressway. And as you all know, crashes on all our roadways are up during the pandemic. They rose. So comparing 2021 back to 2017 is difficult. But what we were able to get is variable speed limits were activated on the Schuylkill Expressway in June of 2021 between the Pennsylvania Turnpike out in Valley Forge and City Avenue, Route 1. Most of that is in Montgomery County. There's a little bit of it in Philadelphia County, but most of that segment is on the 4-lane section of the Schuylkill, 2 lanes each way in Montgomery County. What we found with the data, crash data from the second half of 2021, so that's June through December, is in June and July, there was really not much change in rear end crashes, but in every single month after that, rear end crashes dropped. Every single month dropped off into the end of the year. I don't have 2022 crash data at this point, but in 2021, we went from 40 rear end crashes a month on the Schuylkill down into the low to mid teens, and we did it consistently. We didn't do it, the drivers did it, but it happened consistently. So far, that looks very, very positive. Not only is there less congestion, less damage from accidents, less injuries, but there's less emergency responders having to run out there, and then they're in traffic. It's a better situation, hopefully, for everybody. Hopefully these trends continue into 2022. We've also have now 12 months of data on congestion on 76 where the variable speed limits were put in. On the Schuylkill in the morning, eastbound, we found basically no change in travel times. In the afternoon, eastbound travel times have dropped by 5 minutes over the last 12 months, and volume hasn't come down. In the afternoon, westbound in the morning, we've seen a drop by 4 minutes in travel time. But in the afternoon, westbound, no change. I can't speak for why we have such a drop. I don't think sun glare is all of it, but I do note in the directions where you're traveling into the sun, there doesn't seem to be a change in travel time, but I don't totally buy that that's the only reason. The department is still looking at why are we having such an effect one way, but not the other way, and then it flips in the afternoon. But either way, with the variable speed limits, now that people are getting used to them and what they mean, meaning as you see the speed limit drop, you know there's congestion ahead, things are flowing a little smoother, and there is a slightly positive effect on travel time and a significant effect so far on crashes. And that's what we're hoping for on the Blue Route as well. Non-recurrent congestion, of course, due to special events, if the Pope's in town or the Eagles, Lord knows, ever get to the Super Bowl or something, and it happens to be here. Weather incidents, that's another story. All right, at this point, I think I'm turning it over to Conor. Well, any other questions so far? All right, Conor. I'll keep running the screen, but
yep.
I'll mute myself and get my face off of there.
Thanks, Mike. So just continuing off what Mike introduced as kind of the need on the corridor for these projects, the variable speed limits and the queue warning project that we're under design now. Here's just a quick map of some of the crash clusters that we identified and Mike spoke to. You see you have, quite a lot of rear end crash clusters, the blue dots there, and then all the segments you'll see that have kind of the double statewide average crash rate for a similar highway facility across the state. You'll see a lot of them kind of in the southern portion of the corridor there, south of 30 down to the 95 interchange. You'll see in a minute when I go through some of the speed data, you'll see it correlates with a lot of the recurring congestion we're seeing on the corridor. So on the next slide here, we'll kind of go through some of the system benefits. Mike kind of touched on some of these, but and the data obviously speaks for itself. that he spoke to for what was seen on the 76 deployment as well. But I guess the benefit of installing a system like this is, you know, we want to proactively lower the speed of oncoming traffic coming into a heavily congested area. So with the devices we're going to deploy under this project, PennDOT will be able to tell really when congestion is building and when the density of vehicles is building. They can, you know, ahead of that area, they can lower the speed limits progressively, starting at the basic speed limit of 55 miles per hour, lower it in a set increment, and kind of avoid some of that heavy congestion that's due to a sudden change in speed and causes that stop-go condition that kind of ricochets, you know, back into the stream of traffic. So that's kind of the one benefit, and the other one is, you know, reducing crashes is the big one. Mike spoke to the reduction that was seen on the Schuylkill. I think we're trying to achieve something similar here, and you'll see again when I show the change in speeds on the next slide that show up, you know, on an AM and PM peak on average for an entire year. It's pretty telling where some of those areas could use this. And another benefit is the ability for PennDOT to, you know, issue a blanket speed limit reduction for the corridor if there's, you know, heavy rain or snow or visibility issues, and there needs to be a blanket speed limit reduction. They can kind of do that for the entire corridor with the click of a button. And the other thing is we're going to be putting up dynamic message signs intermittently throughout the corridor that can also provide like a reinforcement warning to drivers that there will be, you know, sudden stop ahead, and kind of warn drivers again. And what kind of underlines this whole thing is, and makes this work, we think, so well on 76 is Pennsylvania has the ability to deploy these variable speed limits and allow them to be, you know, statutory. They can be enforceable as well. So in other areas that's kind of not written into the legislation. So most times it's just a recommended speed or a advisory speed, but in this case it's these will be like the statutory speed limit for the corridor. So on the next slide here, I'm going to kind of go through some of the congestion data we pulled for an entire year. We pulled AM and PM peak data for the northbound and southbound direction for our project limits here for an entire year during both peaks. And for the northbound direction, we're seeing in the AM kind of pockets of slow traffic from 95 interchange all the way up through Route 1. You're seeing a lot more red, you know, slow speeds there around the interchange areas. But in the PM peak, you're seeing kind of something similar down near Mcdade, and you know, same thing around Baltimore Pike and Route 1. And in the southbound direction, on the next slide here, we're seeing southbound in the morning, kind of down near Route 1, Baltimore Pike. You're seeing a slowdown area, but I guess the big piece I wanted to cover was in the PM peak. Everyone kind of knows this. You know, on a typical day or on a Friday, even, you're seeing a really significant reduction in speed as you approach Route 30 and just south of Route 30, all the way down through Baltimore Pike. And that's, you know, something very alarming from the data standpoint, but also looking at the crash data, you could see why there'd be a lot of crash clusters there, right? You have almost average speeds of 40 to 50 miles per hour, and then you're dropping down to somewhere in the 20 to 30 mile per hour range pretty suddenly. So on the next slide there, we're going to cover some of the deployments, and Mike already covered the limits, kind of Old Gulf Road, Montgomery Avenue area, all the way down to 95, and some devices on 95 southbound. The pink dots represent dynamic message signs that will be put out there to, again, reinforce the message that there will be potentially stop traffic ahead or reduction in speed limit ahead. We have them placed intermittently between some of the major interchanges. And then on 95 southbound, again, to warn drivers coming into 476 northbound that there may be congestion on the ramp there, or there may be a reduction in speed limits, to just be advised. The two other devices there that we don't have shown are, there's many of them, so it kind of would cluster up the map there, but we have, based on the limits of the project, we've identified 58 variable speed limit devices spaced at every half mile or less than a half mile to comply with the statutory requirement to make the speed limits enforceable. And we have 35 vehicle detectors, that will be constantly detecting speed, density data of the roadway, and kind of will factor into how the speed limits are calculated and posted on the roadway. And as Mike noted, the project schedule we have here is next spring, and construction summer 2023 starting. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Sandi to cover the hard shoulder running project.
Okay. Can everybody hear me? All right.
Yep.
Yes.
All right. I just wanted to say, if anybody had any questions about the ATC project, if they wanted to type them in, we can take care of that as well. But everybody's here to hear about the hard shoulder running project. And basically everybody knows this area of 476, and it spills over onto 95 southbound, but this area of 476, where we go from having a 6-lane section, which 3 lanes in each direction, and we end up down with 4 lanes, the 2 lanes in each direction from Route 3 all the way down to the 95 interchange. So the project limits are generally from Darby Road, which is just north of Route 3, all the way down through the I-95 interchange. And then we are also tasked with southbound 95 from Stewart Avenue all the way down through the 322 interchange. And as Mike mentioned, we do have the unique opportunity to use the inside shoulders along 476 as part of this project, leaving the outside shoulders for emergency vehicles and emergency access during these peak times. So normally what you would see out there is you'll see, like, during an inactive condition where we have that inside shoulder closed, and it will act like a shoulder. It'll just look like a wide shoulder out there. And then during the active condition, you'll see a regular 12-foot lane striped out there for use. And we will be using, like, the big gantries like you see up on bridges that will say each lane and whether it's open or not. The big monotube signs with arrows down over each lane, or if you're not allowed to use the lane, you see that big X in there. So that's what we plan on using along 476. 95 on the next slide would be the normal condition of what you're used to seeing out there. I-95 would typically use the outside shoulder as its flex lane. So during normal conditions, what you have out there now, which is 3 travel lanes and a shoulder. Then during the active periods, that outside shoulder becomes your travel lane. In order to accomplish this, we all know I-95 in that area is narrow. We don't have the wide medians. We just basically have the concrete barrier down the middle. and that shoulder on the side. So in order to accommodate this, we do reduce the travel lanes along southbound I-95 from 12-foot lanes to 11-foot lanes. So that way we can stay within the existing footprint of the highway. And we can go into the next slide. Of course, in order to make this all work, what we actually have to do is run a lot of traffic models. We ran a lot of different options, figuring out where we need to do this, what we need to do. And what's very interesting is that what works in the morning doesn't necessarily work in the afternoon. And we have to make sure, as everybody knows, is we can't flood 95. So we did a lot of research, or I should say a lot of modeling. So basically what we found that is the northbound flex lane. Northbound is pretty straightforward on 476. You can start the flex lane down within the 95 interchange and take it all the way up to the interchange at Route 3. Southbound, obviously a little bit more tricky. So we begin the flex lane southbound up at the Route 3 interchange, but in the morning, yeah, we have to end it just north of Route 1, just to keep us from flooding the 95 area. But in the afternoon, because of the way the traffic changes, we can keep that flex lane open down almost all the way into the interchange with 95.
Actually, Sandy, a quick correction. It'll be just north of Baltimore Pike, not Route 1.
Oh, did I pick the wrong interchange?
No, that's all right.
Yes, I did. All right. So then, of course, then we move on to I-95, where the flex lanes again are very complex. We basically begin the lane with the on-ramp from 476 onto 95. But in the morning, we have to end the
Sorry
flex
about that.
lane just before the Edgemont ramp. And then we do carry an auxiliary lane from that Edgemont Avenue down through. In the afternoon, we can actually, because there's so much traffic, the traffic is more, it's the way the traffic goes to the bridge. And because it changes so significantly between the afternoon and the morning, in the afternoon, we can actually end the flex lane all the way down by Engle Street. So it's very interesting in the fact that because we're using lane controls and gantries, and this truly becomes an actively managed lane. The department will be able to look at the triggers that will have them responding to whether or not, when do we open the flex lane, how far do we open it, when do we have to close it. But what the model tells us on the next page is that we can improve some travel times. So if we look at the benefits for the northbound travel, you can see, and we do consider southbound on I-95 if you're coming southbound from Wanamaker Avenue and you're traveling onto the northbound 476. All that movement is all considered one. Well, we have to look at both when we're looking at improvements. So when you're looking at that movement in the morning, we pretty much even out along I-95, but the northbound traffic sees approximately a 7-minute improvement in travel time. And then of course in the PM, we're actually seeing improvements of 4 minutes on just on that section of 95. And we see improvements of 9 minutes on 476. So for somebody making that entire trip is going to save about 13 minutes. Southbound travel, again, we are considering 476 all the way from up at Route 30 and all the way down through the interchange with I-95, and then from the interchange all the way down to 322 for southbound travel. So what we see in the AM is, again, there's no improvement, but there's no hurt to it, to 95. We do have the flex lane open, which accounts for some of that improvement. And then 476 sees almost a 5-minute improvement. I think we can we go back one slide? There we go. But the significant improvement that you do see is in the afternoon, where we see improvements of almost 6 minutes on I-95 and almost 19 minutes on 476. So we do see a drastic improvement for southbound travel in the PM. Okay, we can go to the next one. So like I said earlier, what we are doing is we've got those big gantries with lane controls so that everyone will know like which lanes are open, which lanes aren't open. We're deploying the VSL, the variable speed limit signs. Those will be going out with the ATC project. They are basically going to be in the same position that they are for our flex lane project, and as well as the variable message signs that you'll see going out there. We will also have cameras and vehicle detectors to help us manage the project. And the next slide, because I know we're getting short on time here. So we got a bunch of next steps for our project. We have some tasks. We have the safety review and the design field view. We also have the operational analysis to help give PennDOT those cues for when to open lanes and when to close them. The ConOps and the SER, that's all ITS talks for the equipment that's out there and helping PennDOT manage that equipment. We will be going out with task force, and we'll be getting
I think we encountered some technical difficulties.
Say, am I frozen or is Sandy? I guess.
No, just Sandy.
Oh, okay. Well, we're currently coordinating with Federal Highway on various structural, the ConOps and the systems engineering report. And we're undergoing a structural analysis, particularly of the bridges between McDade and Baltimore Pike, as well as up over Reed Road, which is in Marple. And then there's a couple of culverts on the Haverford Marple line, which quite honestly, their shoulders aren't wide enough. There are a few areas where we're going to have to add retaining walls to the median. So we're looking at all of that. There's quite a bit that goes into it.
So we have a couple questions for you guys.
Go ahead.
The first one would be, how would enforcement of the flex lanes restrictions be handled? Would there be places where police could patrol conditions?
Yeah, the district through the ITS or through the TMC is able to have a record of what the speed limit was at any given time. So the state police are supposed to be able to enforce this now on the Schuylkill Expressway. That said, the Schuylkill being what it is, I'm not sure to what extent that enforcement is happening yet. I think they're still getting used to that. Speeds on the Schuylkill to an extent are also self-enforcing, at least during the peak hours. You can only go so fast. On the blue route, hopefully by the time we get there on the blue route, the state police will have perfected this a little bit, but there will be places where, you know, if the speed limit's 35 and you're going 55, you know, you're 20 miles over the speed limit. So it's supposed to be enforceable just like any other roadway.
Got it. So here's another question. How long will the flex lanes be open to traffic during the AM and PM peaks on both 476 and on I-95?
We don't have a specific answer to that, and I'm not sure if there is one. It would be flexible, depending on travel volumes, weather conditions. If there's an incident in the left lane, you know, we might, you know, get them over to the shoulder and keep the right lane open. We could also use this system if we're doing some construction. We can close a lane in advance and shift people over onto the shoulder if we're working on the right side. So that would be flexible depending on conditions. Generally speaking, I imagine we will come to the conclusion that there will be some regular hours on a normal day, you know, where it's sunny and it's a typical weekday. But that could vary depending on conditions and, you know, if there's a late rush hour for some reason, or if there's something going on down at the stadiums that might extend it. On Fridays in the summer, I can see it being a little different.
Gotcha. Those were the only, I do have a really quick question. At the beginning, you referenced an extension to the ramp on Route 1.
Yeah.
Was that the Springfield exit or the Lima exit?
That is, which media Springfield is Baltimore Pike. Route 1. It's
Okay.
as part of the job that's under construction now, the Mcdade Boulevard project. We're also up at the Route 1 interchange, the ramp from, if I could zoom in on that, the ramp from Route 1 northbound onto the blue route. So going up that long hill to Cardinal O'Hara High School. That on-ramp is going to become about 1,000 feet longer.
Okay.
Give or take. I think it's actually 950 feet, but whatever. Now, the benefit there is that's almost every single morning. That's where the backup northbound starts, is trucks and vehicles trying to make it up that hill while there's other vehicles piling on from Route 1. And then that propagates backwards toward Baltimore Pike and in some days even further south than that.
Absolutely. You're preaching to the choir, man. I got it.
But by extending it that long, we find that if vehicles can maintain their speed up that, we could save 3 or 4 minutes in travel time every single day on that roadway. Average.
Wow. Beautiful.
Just with that one improvement. So that we're
the
building.
Almost 20-minute reduction of southbound 476 is worth its weight for the whole thing. So just.
Yeah, on a typical afternoon, as you know, from, I think it's Lancaster Avenue, which I know is up in Montgomery County. No, right there, that's still Delaware County, but up close to the Montgomery County line. From there, southbound can be upwards of 35 minutes between Lancaster Avenue and I-95 in the afternoon, southbound.
Yes. Wow.
Whereas at night, you can make that trip in about 14 minutes.
Correct. So if anybody, wait, I think we just got a last question in there. Okay, here's one. For the Reed Road Bridge, will you have to expand it to accommodate a third lane?
Yes.
Okay.
Whether that means widening into the median or some more substantial improvement, we're looking at that now.
Perfect.
We're not looking at moving it or making it longer, but the width isn't there.
Okay. That was the question. So that was the end of our questions. If anybody, any of our attendees have specific questions on this presentation, you can email them to us at dctma.org, info, that's info@dctma.org. We will pass them along to our engineering team here and get you some answers. Like I said in the beginning, this program has been recorded and will be available on the DCTMA YouTube channel. And we will upload that and pass around a link to view. So please feel free to refer your colleagues and any other folks to the session, to view the session. Thank you for all of the questions, and thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Senator Kearney. Thank you to all of our engineering guests. And please remember DCTMA when it comes to community outreach on this project, because we're more than willing to stay in the loop and help you get this information out to our Delaware County folks. So I want to take a moment just to recognize and thank our DCTMA staff for all their hard work and dedication to our cause. Terry Salvador is our finance director. Lauren Fink, who was our producer today and the project manager on our TDM education. Marianne Sandone, our project manager on the Senior Travel Program. And Allison Striggle, who is the director of our Community Traffic Safety Program. Please stay informed about additional TDM education programs and webinars coming to you from DCTMA, and bookmark our page at www.dctma.org for this and for other valuable information. So thank you all, and remember, travel safely and sustainably. Have a great day.